look, you come from a family of focused workers, strong. And that if you can apply what you know outside of this to this business will boom as it has.
100%.
Right? That's how you do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can talk any chapters you want.
Well, we're going to talk about chapters. I'm going to start off with, when people think of Brockton, Massachusetts, they think of Marvelous
Marvin Hagler.
Rocky Marciano. But I think of you, my friend.
Well, I'm glad you think of me because Brockton was where I was raised. Now, I was born at a military hospital in Virginia. My father was an orthopedic surgeon who went into private practice in Brockton, Mass. The interesting thing is when we work with many biotech clients who are based in the greater Boston area, Cambridge is a hub. When they hear me talk, very rarely will they hear a New England accent. But when I speak with them, it reminds me of growing up. I hear the accent of Boston. So when I hear they're from the Boston area and they grew up there, they ask, where are you from? I said, well, I'm from the Boston area too. When I become more precise with Brockton, I get funny looks.
Why is that?
Because Brockton has gone downhill. My wife will tell you that Brockton, to her, she remembers seeing something on one of these in-flight stations about the number of pregnant high school students. And then just recently how they wanted to call in the National Guard to protect the teachers. That's Brockton. It's gone downhill. Now, I can tell you what I always say is this, the same thing I told my kids. I mean, you grew up here in Miami, you went to good high school, but Brockton High School represented for us back in the 70s and early 80s, the real world.
Right.
Everybody was together. We had one high school. So we had kids from the housing projects. We had kids from the white Jewish neighborhood. We had kids from the South Side. Everybody was together. That's the real world. So nobody was sheltered.
So were you part of like when Boston had, or Massachusetts, the busing situation, right?
Yeah, we did a little bit, but not so much. I mean, Brockton back then was still what it is today. It's a blue-collar, mostly middle-class city. I grew up on the west side. When you hear the people who grew up on the west side of Brockton, you'd be amazed. So first off, when we later talk about my daughter in pickleball.
Well, we're going to talk about pickleball,
Irving Herbert Franklin, the founder, with his brother, lived around the corner from me. I knew him as an old man from trick-or-treating and his kids.
Are you kidding me?
His son is the chairman today. His grandson is the one who's on social media, who's running the business. So he was around the corner. On my block, we had, you ready?
Yeah.
So Schull family, doctor, orthopedic surgeon, put all the athletes back together again. Gelman, doctor, delivered the babies that eventually need to be put back together. Retail store, Cats. Weiner, again, nice Jewish family, doctor, my father's partner. Bob Epstein, listen to this, largest Seagram's distributor in the northeastern United States. One of the wealthiest families you would never know, just down to earth. Next house over, Gilson, candy company. Do you remember those Necco wafers? They were powdery things.
Yeah, I think so.
That was their company. They were a big candy company back in the early 1900s that they passed down. Next one, Zapp. So back in the day in the Northeast, there was a chain of stores called Mammoth Mart. They sold to King. So these were real,
and they were
real estate and retail.
This is the fabric of what made you.
But see, but I grew up in the nice section with people who all went on to college and did great things, but in a city that was real. So what I tell my kids is this: they went to Coral Reef High School. One is homeschooled, Florida. I guess it's called Florida. That's the real world. When you go to a sheltered world, forgive me for saying a Ransom Everglades or some of those schools. The reality is they have more issues with those kids than we do with the kids who go to Coral Reef and elsewhere because they're not rebellious. They're learning to study and they're integrated. And I value that.
And then I think long term, those kids are going to be able to adapt to call it the real world. Once they graduate school, they got to go get a job, live in a different city and stuff like that. And those cities and people, every walk of life, age, background, religion, whatever, you're going to be able to adapt. If you've always been in a bubble of one of these elite schools, it's going to be a little tougher for them.
And for some reason, maybe it's because of my upbringing in Brockton, and we were with everybody, is that I tend to go to the underdog. I'm more inclined to help the underdog. That's who you see me when you meet Bo, when you meet my buddy Antonio Brown. I always tell my kids, they didn't choose to be born into Liberty City. Antonio De La Brown doesn't have a mean bone in his body. And De La is worshipped in Liberty City as a star athlete, but not just that. He's worshipped because he went to West Virginia and graduated with a degree. All of his kids went to college and earned degrees.
That's awesome.
And yet De La, as a child, said, David, the biggest refrigerator I had in my home was the size of what you probably had in your dorm room in college. And do you know, it was always empty.
That's heartbreaking.
But again, he didn't choose that.
He didn't choose that, right?
He chose a better path.
Yes.
So to me, personally, I would rather help him help his family and do things to give them the added push because they've already made the right choice.
Yeah.
They just don't necessarily have positive male role models in their life. If they do, they're usually, I mean, most of their dads are gone.
Yeah.
Or they were never around. So to me, I would rather spend my time doing that than hanging around with a bunch of snooty kids from elite private school. And that's my Brockton upbringing because that's what we did.
So let's take a step back. There's a part of you that I didn't know. I've known you for over 20 years that I just figured out on Facebook, which is you love sports. It's well documented, but you were a sports agent for a while.
For a very short period of time. So so as you probably know, I have a law degree from the University of Miami.
Correct.
I have sports in my blood, just as you and your brothers do. And your sister too. I can't leave her out. I'm sorry about that. So anyway, back in the day when I was a law student at UM, it's a true story, is I wanted to be a litigator. Why? Because you and I can talk. I wanted to go into court, have a good time, and I enjoyed it. Plus, you know what was the hit show on Thursday night? LA Law.
LA Law. Everybody loved it.
Everybody watched. I'm sure that your brothers watched it and dreamed of being litigators, and your dad said, forget that, go do something else. So I liked that. And I came from a family mostly of doctors. Doctors hate lawyers.
Right.
But most of the kids I grew up with were either getting an MBA, a JD. Nobody went to medical school. So I studied journalism. I studied what you're doing here. I worked as a broadcaster in radio for a short period of time. When I realized that I was making no money and it cost me more to put gas in my tank, it was horrible, Dan. So what I ended up doing is saying, you know what? I've studied, I'm going to do something more. So I went to law school. I started at Indiana University School of Law in the Midwest, and I transferred to Miami, here, your home city.
Right.
And when I got to Miami, it was an eye-opener because, first off, Miami Law School, you had the typical born and raised Miami's, the Cuban Americans, A students study. Then you had the people who were there in their golf clothes with their golf clubs in the back. I was in the middle of it. I just said, you know what? I'm going to do my work, but I'm going to have a good time. The greatest lesson I learned was I hated the actual legal work, which was mostly boring research and writing. But by chance, while I was an intern for the public defender's office, Rob Rudolph, who's connected to me today, he'll confirm this is true.
Okay.
He was my mentor at the public defender's office. And my job during the summer between my second and third year was to interview the juveniles for the sounding, which is the equivalent of the arraignment. That was my job. And you'd go into juvenile detention center and you'd sit and interview, and everybody was innocent, of course. And it was so boring, but yet you were helping. And while I was doing that, I was working with somebody I met. Remember Body Works in South Miami? You might.
Absolutely.
So it was in the bakery center. Remember the bakery? There was a sports rock cafe.
Yeah, of course, man. Yeah.
So when I got to Miami in 1992, Body Works was the in gym. This was before Lifetime Fitness.
Yeah,
this was
I remember
before any of it. And it was a cool place. And it was big with aerobics and step aerobics.
Yep.
And I walked there. I lived in South Miami, which I guess they call High Pines now.
Yeah, it's all fancy now.
I could walk or drive to law school. It was across the street. So I would go to Body Works and I meet everybody. And one day I was in there and I started talking. I'm pretty social. And I end up talking to somebody who's a national aerobic champion. Her name is Giselle. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And Giselle started talking to me. The truth is we started dating, which was the biggest mistake, as you know. And Giselle said to me, I know you can promote and market just by talking to you. You have a journalism background, yet you're in law school. I want to do a TV project in Spanish for exercise and fitness. And I said, really? Why? Well, I just believe there's a market for it. I have a contract with the National Aerobics Championship Tour representing Reebok. Can you help me? I'm thinking, what can I do? And then I thought, you know what? Giselle's mom was into television production. So we met and we developed a plan to tape a pilot, just a short pilot, back when VHS cassettes were flowing at the Areola house.
They're all over the place.
The adult movies were tossed aside. Those were put in Ricky's room.
Those are hidden.
Yeah, those were Ricky's. But anyway, but with the videos. So our idea was don't produce something extensive, but produce a segment of a Spanish language step aerobic video and market it to one of the big companies to see if they wanted to pick up production. Now, I was a second year law student going to third year. I didn't know any of this stuff. I had no idea what I was doing. But I knew that it was more fun than going to the juvenile detention center.
Correct.
So we started. And then back then, there was no email. There was no internet. I had a fax machine. I had a directory. It looked like a big encyclopedia of sports companies. And I had my phone. And I started calling and faxing the manufacturers about, we're going to do this project in Spanish. We'd like to talk to you. I just looked them up. I didn't know them. There was no LinkedIn back then.
No, at all.
And before you know it, I'm on the phone with Danskin in New York, Zach Salino, I'll never forget. And he's like, wow, this is interesting. I don't know if we have any room in our campaign, but will she wear Danskin? Send it down. So the boxes started arriving one by one. I had Danskin leotards, not for me, of course.
Of course not.
I thought about it, but I didn't. So we had Danskin. I had Avia. Do you remember Avia shoes, AVIA?
Yep, I do.
They were eventually bought out by Reebok. They came from Portland, Oregon, too, not Nike. They wanted it. And then the call that changed my career, this is a true story, is when somebody called me and said, hi, I don't remember her name. I'm the PR representative for Gilda Marks of Beverly Hills. And I said, yes. Gilda and Bob would like to speak with you. What? I mean, I'm a law student, Dan. Gilda and Bob Marks get on, and I hear a voice along the lines of, hello, David, this is Bob. I'm going to put Gilda on. And you could hear it was echoing. They must have been in a 7,000 square foot Beverly Hills home. And Gilda said, David, thank you for sending me the info on Giselle. And what I had done was put together a press kit. It had some photos. It had a bio. That was my true start in sports PR. But I did it without knowing what I was doing.
Yeah, you didn't even know that was a press kit.
I didn't know what it was. I sent it. And again, true story. Bob Marks and Gilda said, David, I don't know if you know my role in creating this exercise fad called aerobics, but Jane Fonda is a personal friend. And if you see what Jane's done with videos and more, that's all with me. I've supported it. That's my aerobic wear. And I just came back from Spain, and Bob and I are talking about getting involved with a Spanish language project. Some of our retailers are looking for the same. One of them is JCPenney. It has large presence in inner city LA and in Spanish communities. So we'd love to talk to you about working with Giselle. So don't produce that video. Stop what you're doing and meet with us. And I'm like, wow. So this was me as a law student.
Second year law student. Yeah, right.
With a fax machine, a phone, a condo down across from Dadeland Mall with no experience. And
but that hustle and naiveness, like but again, that's part of it.
You know what it is? It's creativity.
It's creativity, 100%.
It's creativity. It's what makes you successful and me to this day. Nothing's ever changed.
Yeah.
So as I fast forward, we had to then determine where to meet. So the World Aerobic Championship was happening in a month and a half in Las Vegas. The plan was to meet there. The only issue was that Giselle's contract was with a company that produced the aerobic tour. And when I read it carefully as a law student, it said that everything had to go through them because she was gaining the visibility through them. So you couldn't do anything without them. So I hired a lawyer, David Berkison is his name. I don't know if he's still in practice. He was an entertainment lawyer. He did mostly music. And David and I worked on a plan to negotiate out. David and I were going to Las Vegas together, and we had a meeting set with Bob Marks, Gilda Marks, and legal counsel. This was me again as a second-year law student. It's not as exciting as Drew Rosenhaus, but I didn't steal any clients. You know what I mean? And I was still doing this stuff. And what happened is, before I got there, I remember I either came down with a bug, I wasn't feeling well, and Giselle was being nasty to me. I'm like, I'm not going. And so we got into an argument, and I didn't go. And I said, David, you handle it on your own. And he went, and he handled it. He called me and said, David, we're just going to have to wait this one out, but you're on the right track. They want to work with her. So I didn't go. And then Giselle and I separated altogether from business. It was too much of a headache. But the lessons learned are what I applied in the next chapter. So David worked with Giselle. And to this date, if you look her up, she's done videos with Daisy Fuentes. She's been in ad campaigns.
Wow.
That start came through the work we did together in the summer of 1992. How about that?
That is amazing.
Just created it.
Yeah.
And then what happened next is Bob Marks called me and he said, David, I'm sorry you weren't there, but we enjoyed speaking with you. Do you have any other ways to help us with sports? And I said, well, what are you looking to do? We used to be Paula Abdul and the LA Lakers. They would wear our gear, but we've been edged out by multiple companies. Can you help? And I said, I probably can. I mean, it's easy. Well, you called us. Can you call teams? I said, sure. So they worked out a deal with me as a second-year law student that for every team I got them in, I got a percentage of whatever would be net revenue they would generate. I think it came, maybe it was small, probably like $5,000, $6,000 a team. But we got the San Antonio Spurs dancers. We got the New England Patriots cheerleaders. And we did get the Laker girls back, which was a big win. As this was happening, and I was still in law school now because the summer had ended. I'm in my senior year. I got another call, and it was from a great friend of mine who I wish him the best, named Charlie Fernandez. Charlie Fernandez is a business entrepreneur, just like your dad, built a fortune through a copy business. And he called me and said, hey, I don't really know much about this, but my buddy Mike Wall, I'm working with him to help him in his sports bun company. You work with an aerobic wear manufacturer. I said, I do. Well, we represent Mary Jo Fernandez from Miami, the tennis player.
Yeah.
And we're looking for an aerobic wear deal. And he says to me, but the reality is she doesn't look good in aerobic wear. And I said to him, is this what you're telling me the first time? He goes, look, I don't know what I'm doing, but come out and meet me. And the office was in the Grand Bay, the Grand Bay office.
Yeah, of course.
Remember the hotel was there? It was great.
Absolutely.
Well, now it's these monstrous high rises in a tiny little office building. I met with them, and Charlie Fernandez was as real as anyone gets. I consider him to be one of my sources of inspiration in business because he was real. Charlie's the type of guy who would treat everybody equally. You could be the person pushing the lawnmower in the yard. Or Charlie was just born and raised, blue collar, very successful, more money than most people would ever know. And he taught me how to be just generally good. So Charlie said, look, I don't know what I'm doing. Why don't you come work with us? So I did. So as soon as I graduated law school, the next day, I think I had a party in South Miami. I went to the office. And my job then was to figure out how to generate revenue from the portfolio they had. They had a portfolio, mostly from marketing deals. John Sally, remember with the Heat?
Of course.
Mary Jo Fernandez. They were doing something with Mark Higgs. They were doing a benefit with Brett Perriman and the Lions teammates. So I looked at it and said, guys, this is a bunch of nothing. And it was funded by a real estate tycoon. So he didn't care. It was fun for him.
It was fun. Right.
He wanted to be an agent to sign players. And he tried, but nobody was going to compete with a Rosenhaus or Lee Steinberg, who's also a good friend of mine, by the way. You have to meet. I got to get Lee on this podcast.
I would love to have him.
I'll get Lee when he comes to Miami. He's going to come to my party. We'll book him.
I would love to have him.
So I said to them, look, guys, I was doing marketing deals and I didn't have any overhead and I made money. And you're wasting time on this. And Michael's like, well, I have my real estate business. This is just for fun. Well, I don't want to do this for fun.
Yeah, right.
So for a year, we worked to, put together marketing deals. The biggest one that I ever did was with, do you remember Varney sunglasses?
Rings a bell.
Again, I got, how many years do I have on you now?
You got like 10 or 11 years on me. Yeah.
I mean, you look much younger than I do. Ricky doesn't, but that's okay. Yeah. So 10 years. What I can tell you is that Varney sunglasses, it was called Orlux Distribution in the U.S. They wanted to get into the NFL. So we had a player, you might remember from the Dolphins, from a little sugarcane town by the name of Louis Oliver, great Florida Gator.
Absolutely, yeah. Gator first round draft pick.
He's on social media with me now. What he has to remember is that Lou came to our office and said, I want to be in GQ magazine. Now, we looked at each other, including Charlie, like, I don't know how we're going to put this guy in GQ. I said, I have an idea. They want to get into the NFL, the sunglass company. They're not Ray-Ban. They're not well known. And maybe we can work something out. So we did. So we put Louis Oliver into the very first NFL campaign for Varney sunglasses. And he was in GQ and he was on billboards in Miami. Louis Oliver had a smile from ear to ear.
Loved it.
He made a little bit of money. He didn't care. He wanted to be in GQ magazine. He made it. We made his wish come true.
Wow.
So we did deals like that. But Michael and the other guys really wanted to represent players because you had a more predictable stream of income with percentage of contract. So we got certified. I was certified NFLPA. Michael was NBA. I think Charlie was NFL. And then I brought people into the mix.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look, I was a marketing PR person. And so I had my good buddy Morris Copeland, who, by the way, recently retired as the vice mayor of Miami-Dade County.
Really?
So Mo was working for Juvenile Justice, HRS. He just retired. He made it big. He was one of our leaders at the University of Colorado. Morris, all the guys at Colorado who are our age, John Embry, who's now with the Dolphins, my good brother Solomon Wilcox, who works with me now, they all said, Mo, why don't you go to law school, get a degree? He couldn't do it. He couldn't afford to do it. But they wanted him as an agent. Said, Mo, you know what? Do it part-time. Come work with me. And he did. And then in the end, we partnered with a great Florida connection. You ready? Remember who the quarterback was when Colorado won the Orange Bowl down here?
Hagen.
No, he was hurt. Charles S. Johnson. So
Charles Johnson, yes, absolutely.
So remember, and Hagen is great. Hagen, I love him to death.
The famous fifth down.
Hagen, well, that was Charles was the first. Hagen is at San Diego State right now. And if you look at him on, all these guys are connected to me. We're all brothers from Colorado.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that Charles S. Johnson came off the bench as nervous as could be.
As a freshman, right?
I don't think he might have been a sophomore junior. I mean, I was already gone from school, but he came in and Bieniemy scored a touchdown. And then remember, there was the punt return that was called back.
Yep.
on Rocket because of clipping, and they won the championship. CJ was that guy. So CJ became, just like Morris, he quit football to focus on academics. He today is in student government. He ran for the chancellor. He's been in politics out in Colorado.
He's been in politics,
He's a legend in Colorado. CJ is the nicest guy. He should be at my party. All these guys.
I can't wait to go to this party. I'm going to be rubbing elbows for everybody. Yeah.
So Bienemy, if he's not, he's with UCLA right now, but all these guys, we all help each other. Solly will definitely be here because he works with me.
Did he play Colorado?
Colorado, absolutely.
Yeah, he played in the Bengals.
He was drafted in the 8th round in 1987. He made the team. He was with the Bengals, the Vikings, and the Steelers.
He played for a long time.
He was a top broadcaster. He still is.
He still is.
But he works with us halftime, and I'll get into that later. So the point of the matter is that all these guys wanted Mo to help them. Then CJ became an agent. CJ had no financial resources. He was partnered with a guy named Mark Walters. Today, Mark Walters is one of the general counselors at Microsoft. Greatest, nicest. His son is the head coach at Purdue, Ryan Walters.
Really?
He played at Colorado.
It's crazy, the interconnection
the network.
The network is crazy.
So they didn't have any financial backing, so we teamed with them. And together we worked for a year. The problem was that doing it the right way, the ethical way, the Lee Steinberg way, was out of favor. You had mostly people like Drew and Joel Siegel, and all these guys were giving them cars, and we didn't want anything to do with that. Nothing to do with that. So we didn't do well. We had players like a Borgella. I had players like Dwayne Joseph, who out of Syracuse, he's now the head of pro scouting with the Lions. We had ethical players.
Right.
But I was mostly doing marketing stuff. Negotiating for Bo was Larry Lee called me up and said, "Hey, David, I can give Bo $25,000. Is that okay with him?" I'm like, "Larry, you rock, man. Just sign him up."
Yeah, let's go.
These are not number one draft choices.
Yeah.
But we had fun, and most importantly, we helped everybody.
And in that business, it is tough. Unless you get those first round picks, it's a tough way to make a living. And by the way, the shelf life of the player is nothing.
Well, not for long, as they say. Right?
Not for long, right? The NFL? Yeah.
NFL, not for long.
Not for long.
But more importantly to me was that we helped them with a path in life. So, for example, a great story is David Walker. David was one of the top rushers in Syracuse University history. Michael Wall, who graduated from Syracuse, worked with me, tried to recruit him. David went somewhere else. And David was a free agent with the Dolphins when I met him in 92. He got cut. We helped him to get a job because he wanted to stay down here, and he worked with Morris in juvenile justice. Then he got a call from Paul Pasqualoni.
Pasqualoni was there forever.
he coached the running backs for 10 years at Syracuse. And I must have gone up there and visited him 9 out of 10 or whatever it was. Homecomings and more. Then he moved to Pitt with Dave Wanstead. And I have the greatest photos of my little boy, Matthew, hanging on Shady McCoy and all the guys. That was one of his students at Pitt. When the whole Pitt staff got fired, he signed up with Randy Edsel and went to Maryland. But before they even started in the offseason, you got a call that changed his life. Jim Caldwell. I know Jim Caldwell from Colorado. He was our receivers coach. Jim Caldwell hired him as the running back coach at Indianapolis. Caldwell and others got fired. Chuck Pagano kept him. And I love Chuck. Chuck's from Boulder, Colorado. He just celebrated birthday. David and I texted Chuck. I said, "Chuck, happy birthday." He goes, you rock, David. We all know each other. I mean, he was a Boulder, Colorado guy, played at Wyoming. But
even when you moved away from the sports business, you've also maintained a lot of sports relationships.
Well, and I'll tell you why. I think it's because it's the like-minded discipline that you have, that I have. We know structured days. We know schedules. We don't know what it's like to lounge around with free time on our hands. We schedule things, checklists, do this, then, there. If you look at my iPad, it's filled with checklists for every staff member, every client. I used to write them on legal pads. Now I just do it on my iPad notes. I type with my thumbs, but it's in the cloud. So I can look at it on my phone. I am a checklist person. Just like a pilot or a coach or a
you're a very structured person. Walk me through your daily routine because it's out of control.
And I'll come back to sports. But anyway, sports has an important theme in my life, my family, and the discipline. So a typical day for me begins usually around 5 a.m. or 5:30. Because now I'm working almost 100% remote. My office is on Park Avenue South in New York. The majority of staff members are in New York. They commute in, but we only have half the staff in the office on any given day. That's a holdover from the pandemic and freedom. Works fine. Why? We downsized, got nicer space on Park Avenue, and it's a hotel setup. You plug in, play, you don't have a set office. Everybody loves it. And then we have 2 in Boston, and I have 1 in Indiana because he was a former professor at Ball State and he works remotely. I'm in Miami. People think we have an office in Miami. And, oh, you're in Miami. No, I live in Miami. But for 10 years, I commuted between Miami and New York.
I remember. I ran into you in New York.
On a weekly basis. I used to see your brothers. I used to see Jeb Bush was on my flight quite a bit.
Crazy, right?
All the Miami executives, Pat McEnany, my client from Catalyst. So my day usually now, today in Miami, will begin at 5:15, 5:30, upstairs to the gym in my condo tower, iPad and phone, cardio, sweat away. I don't even turn the air conditioning on. You know, I work out with, there's a general contractor, who works out with me. We refuse to put the AC on. We want to sweat in the gym. But I'm reading. And what I read in the morning is, maybe people find it to be absurd, but in our business, the most valuable thing that we have is news and information. God forbid I wake up one morning. My partner, Tony Russo, who's done this longer than me, we both say the day we don't read will be the day that news breaks that impacts multiple clients, and then we're in trouble.
Yeah, right.
So I have a routine of going through everything, including social media. Somebody's birthday, happy birthday, LinkedIn, who has an anniversary, who's posted.
Yeah.
So I'll go through the Wall Street Journal online, the New York Times online, USA Today. Then I'll go through the Apple News app, and I have multiple publications. Then I go online to look at the industry outlets for our industry, biotech and healthcare. These are things you would never read, but BioWorld Today, Endpoint, Stat. These are important to our clients or corporate comms.
Yeah.
And you know what I do? Boom, send it to the team.
Yeah.
Send it to Dan. Well, and my business partner, Brett, said, I didn't realize you send those to the clients. I said, are you kidding me? If I showed you the chatter between 5:30 and 9 with CEOs, myself, you'd be amazed, because information is a valuable asset 100%. In our business. So I'm making it easy for them. Plus they see we care.
Yeah.
And so I do that now. I'm reading, I do a workout, then I go back downstairs, shower. And now today it's mostly Teams calls or Zoom calls. I have a break usually midday. I have to walk the dog. That's my assignment. Yeah. Nobody's around during the day. My wife is working. My daughter's out practicing pickleball. And I usually work up till about 5 o'clock. So now I've gone, 11 and a half hours. Around 5:15, I slow down. And then I'll get changed and I'll go to this kickboxing and workout place called Method X Fitness. And it's awesome. And you know why I like it? Structured class, discipline, different all the time. Workout, sweat, drink protein drink, eat, go home, relax. And then eating healthy is the key too. As
100%.
So that's my routine. But you know what? Even on the weekends and vacations, I never change the reading. Never.
You stay after it. All right. So let me ask you this. Mainstream media, current state of mainstream media, and I'll call it independent media, right? And I'll even throw Twitter in there or X, whatever you want to call it.
X.
I'll call it X. What are your thoughts? Just kind of where we're at in that cycle.
Well, the reality is almost anybody's a journalist today.
Correct.
And so what we teach our clients is the tools that we used before, they've evolved. In the old days, if we were working with you, for example, to help raise the profile of the company, and we did that together, the core would be mostly things you could pick up and read, like
Miami Herald, right?
South Florida Business Journal. And it might be TV news, because TV news always has better ratings than people reading the newspaper. As a matter of fact, if you look at the Miami Herald now, it's an embarrassment.
It's an embarrassment.
There's no business section.
Zero.
Do you know that we have biotech clients here, a big one that's done well, Catalyst Pharmaceuticals, $2.5 billion market cap. Pat McEnany, Columbus grad, by the way.
Okay.
Great guy, good friend of mine. Pat and I took him to the U to visit Mario because, they're Columbus guys.
Yeah.
And we've tried for years to get them to cover the success. 1 year we got them and they were in Business Monday, but ever since they did away with a good business editor and writer, they don't cover it.
It's an embarrassment.
You know what they cover?
What?
Real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate and to a certain extent tourism, but it's mostly real estate.
Right.
The Business Journal is the same way. It's all real estate.
Yeah.
And the Business Journal won't cover them. How about that?
And they're $2 billion companies in
$2.5
Miami.
billion market cap and printing money, doing well, selling drugs for rare diseases, great employer, large footprint in the nation. It's just hard because the dominant industry here that you see covered is real estate.
Yeah.
It's real estate development, and that's what it is. So, but anyway, the media, it's changed. I look at it now as it's much more targeted.
Yeah.
People get news from where they want, when they want it.
Yeah.
That's why a podcast like this, a video program, people want to get it on their own time. I get everything on my iPad. I used to go to the gym in the old days with the newspapers in a plastic bag, and I would read it and I would put it on the floor and people would laugh at me. Then I had to scoop it up.
You were that guy. You're like me. I used to have the Wall Street Journal and then the local paper, and I would read it on an exercise bike.
You had to do it.
You had to do it because that's the only time I could get it in.
And I'm telling you don't want to start your day without reading it.
100%. Now, thank God, I just have my phone.
Well, and so you have your phone, and I have my iPad.
And I have
on both.
And I have my my podcast. So like the Wall Street Journal, which I always used to read, now I listen to a bunch of the
that's great.
Different ones.
I don't really listen to it. I do mostly reading, but I have a set reading regimen on my iPad.
Yeah.
Or my phone, but I usually use the iPad. I can't see as well anymore on the phone, so I use the iPad.
Yeah, it crushes your eyes.
It's my Bible. I mean, I carry it with me. If I lose it, who cares? Everything's in the cloud. That's the way I look at it.
Well, it's funny because I was saying, I think one of the telling things that you're going to see out of this election is the power of the independent media, right? Podcast, Substacks, Twitter thought leaders, let's call it, and the power that they have versus, I'll turn on a CNN or a Fox. I'm like, man, it's like some of the stuff's a little out of date. Like they're not in touch with, I think, what the conversations are really happening.
Yeah, and also, Fox especially has a specific agenda.
Of course, yeah.
We know the Fox agenda. But I look at it this way. I mostly work with industry media for healthcare and pharma. Or I work with mainstream media, but with the health and pharma people. For the Wall Street Journal, our friends are on the help desk. Jonathan Rockoff, the editor. Every January, I go to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. Yeah. We do a breakfast that my partner sets up with a health team and with CEOs to network, to learn what they want to cover, not to pitch stories.
Yeah, right. So
that's our operating universe, healthcare, business, pharma. It's not a beat news writer who's covering news of the day.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the journalists are underpaid and overworked.
Yes.
I've had an AP reporter tell me, true story, that if I don't get that news by 5 o'clock, I don't care how big it is. I'm not covering it because they're not paying my overtime. This happens all the time.
But if you're one of those guys, you should go independent. If you set up a kick-ass Substack, you set up a really good podcast, you'll make more. You'll work on stuff that you want to work on. You don't have an editor that's busting your chops about something, and you'll have more fun and make more money.
Well, I can tell you, I have multiple examples of journalists who either aged out or they were forced out, changes, cutbacks on media. I mean, I won't mention one's name, but he does that on Substack.
Yeah.
He's a freelance writer who's written books and whose articles have been in top magazines and newspapers. Mm-hmm. He does very well creating his own channel and Substack, and it works beautifully. And he's
probably having the most fun he's ever had.
Exactly. Yeah. He went to the Lake Nona Impact Forum that Tavistock hosts, the Lake Nona, I forget the group up in Orlando. And he was there covering it. The articles he wrote were on Substack, and they got a lot of eyeballs on them. So
you see,
remember, it's not about, people think, I'm going to be in the Wall Street Journal. Well, first off, we ask if you could get in the journal, how would it help your business?
Right.
So we make sure that there's a strategic game plan behind it. But the media world has evolved so much. A broadcast, think about it. Is a newspaper just a newspaper? No, it's a website. It's social media channels.
Yeah.
Is a TV news story on a health procedure just TV news? No, it's on the social media channels of the station.
Yeah.
It's on the website. There's a transcript. So everything is blended together.
The newspapers did it to themselves, man. They could have owned podcasts. They could have the classified sections. That used to be their printing money things. Look, they gave it up to the internet.
How many pages is the Miami Herald today? It was about.
It's thin, it's skinny.
There's no business section.
Zero.
There's a business page.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you come from a printing background.
Right.
It's a disgrace.
It's a disgrace.
But remember that newspapers exist for one reason. The publisher of the Miami Herald told me, former publisher Alberto Ibarquin. I'm sure you know him.
I know.
We were in his office years ago with my previous PR firm. And he asked us, me, I think Melissa Gracie and Patricia, who I worked with, why do newspapers exist? Tell me that. And we all looked at each other and said, is this a trick question? And we were in Alberto's office. Remember the old Herald building?
It's a beautiful.
Why do newspapers exist, Dan? Why does a newspaper exist?
To sell ads? What did he say? Use the news to sell ads.
That's exactly right. But he said this way, to connect advertisers to eyeballs. And the content we use to lure them in as news.
Crazy.
That's what he said. Now, a journalism student, myself, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I didn't learn. But that was the message from the publisher.
Right.
So it was to connect advertisers to eyeballs. And as the advertising budgets have dried up or shifted, so too have the pages gone away.
Yeah.
And the Herald, it's an embarrassment.
It's an embarrassment.
Even the Palm Beach Poster, all of them are.
Yeah, but they're also lazy with stories. There's stories that you and I know about that I'm like, man, you're completely getting the story wrong. You kind of half-assed it, or it's just so leaning in one direction. however you want to tell it.
And they do that.
Yeah, and then people just kind of tune out. But let me ask you, so a lot of the people who listen to the show are small business owners. What's one or two things that somebody can do from a PR standpoint that they don't have the big budget, they can't hire the big agency? Like, what should they do?
Well, first off, you know this from your own experience. You have to define public relations because it's often misunderstood. Public relations has nothing to do with selling a product or service. I always say it this way. It creates the operating environment in which you can accomplish your business goals. You need informed publics with an S, not an X. I often make that joke because people who know the Florida chain, when I'm telling this in California, they look at me with a funny smile and response. So who are your publics? Who are you trying to reach?
Yeah.
What are their mindsets? Do they know who you are? Do they know about your product, your service? What is their opinion? So we say that good PR is air cover for the work you do, whether it's to sell, to raise money, and it creates the operating environment for success. The most important thing that one can do is evaluate all external facing communications and ask, is this going to contribute? Will this piece contribute? Is the message right? Yeah. Knowing that today, something I post online will be seen by many. A newspaper article could be posted online too. So we say, know your story, know the message, keep it simple, and then look for ways to inexpensively communicate through channels such as podcasts, earned media, sometimes paid, and social to reach and influence your ultimate target audiences. That's what PR is. Look, I have a client, I can't mention his name, a biotech company, where for some reason the CEO thinks that success is solely tied to stock price, even though we've never, and we explain over and over again, that's not what it is. I don't care. And the IR team and my team, we all laugh and say, sometimes you just can't educate the unwilling. But it's really about creating that environment where you're known, your brand is recognized, the brand is perceived as having value. That's good PR.
Yeah.
Some of it's writing news releases. Look, small business should get coverage in the business journals. There's so many things you can do. But again, it's external communications to reach and influence your ultimate target audience.
In the biotech industry, are you working with very early stage or more mature businesses?
We work with a combination. Most of the companies that we work with at Russo Partners are emerging healthcare businesses. Biopharmaceuticals, so they're developing new drugs. Diagnostics, so they're developing new ways to detect disease early. Could be a liquid biopsy, which is a hot area. We have a cool diagnostic company called Lucid Diagnostics, where if you and I had heartburn, as we typically don't, because we eat healthy, that might be a sign that I am prone to develop esophageal cancer, which is very dangerous. They have a little pill that's a sample collection device that you swallow. They pull it up on a string. There's really no gagging. And they collect samples of the cells that they send to the lab in California. And it's a DNA test. And it's extremely accurate to determine if it's pre-cancer. We did this test on firefighters. They all love it. It's all over the media. So diagnostics. Next, it could be digital health, which of course could be digital therapeutics. Right now in Vegas, the big health conference is wrapping up. We have multiple companies there. That's a challenging field right now because they're still trying to figure out how to make the most of it. Telemedicine we've worked with. We have a company that has applications that you can monitor your health. You can check when you're taking your medicine. And we've done healthcare services. Those are health systems, hospitals. So our sweet spot, though, is biopharmaceuticals and diagnostics. And we've been big in biopharma since our founding, all the way back in '88 with Tony Russo and Susan Noonan. Most of the companies come to us for corporate purposes. They want to raise money. And they want to do partnerships that, in effect, bring in money to support development of drugs or devices or diagnostics. Those partnerships are usually with big pharma, big medtech companies. But it still comes down to money. So the corporate audiences are that investors, strategic partners. Then it could be employees, especially these companies raise $100 million in a Series C round. They have to hire up and it's highly competitive. That's our sweet spot, our sandbox. And so because of that, we know the ultimate audience as well. We know the people who invest. The bankers give us the business. I mean, I get referrals. My teammate Nick, who does IR, we get referrals every week from investment bankers because they want us to clean up the story of a company. And they want us to raise the profile to help the bankers do what they want through a raise. So it's mostly corporate comms. Then we do other support work for healthcare companies.
I mean, so
and by the way, they're all staged, but the majority of our clients are pre-revenue.
Right. The pre-revenue, and then it takes years to develop these drugs, and they need to
take 10 to 12 years and hundreds of millions of dollars. And you don't know if you have something until you've spent a lot of money and taken time. It's different from tech. With tech, but you have IP that people would. Yeah. Here, people are betting on science. The majority of these companies don't make it.
They don't make it.
For those that do make it, it's incredible. And I'm happy for the people. We celebrate together for those who help, because in the end, it's about helping people.
Absolutely,
right?
man. Absolutely. Okay. Pickleball. Let's talk a little pickleball.
Interesting sport. Do you play?
I have played. I've played more paddle. Are you an anti-paddle guy?
I'm not an anti-paddle
pickleball and
guy,
paddle guys have some beef.
But I have somebody who fits right in with the Areola family.
Who?
Write this name down.
Okay.
I'm going to make him Aaron Hasnain.
Okay.
Hasnai.
Right.
His dad is one of the biotech rock stars out in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Very humble, but probably one of the wealthiest biotech men. Built and sold companies. Nicest family.
Yeah.
Aaron worked for me years ago as an intern when I was in San Diego. And then I hired him full time. First gig ever out of college. He went to UC Santa Barbara. One of the nicest, smartest, most polite individuals you'll ever meet. Boxed in college, just like us. He would fit in with the Areola brothers. So Aaron left my firm to go into a family business with a derm company, and he did well. Now he's the VP of business development for a biotech company that his dad helped to build. But his passion is paddle.
Okay.
He lives in San Diego. He converted his tennis court into a paddle court.
Okay.
And he's building with biotech execs as investors these massive paddle clubs, with the first one in San Diego. Aaron showed me. It's incredible. I played paddle once.
Yeah.
When I was out in San Diego for an event at one of my friend's house in La Jolla, my wife and daughter happened to be with me. You know, my wife and daughter were both great tennis players.
They're great tennis players, right.
So we played paddle. It was unique. It was fun. It reminded me more of racquetball than it did tennis.
Yes.
I never played pickleball and never even knew what it was until about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. So Natalia, my wife, who played tennis competitively at FIU, she was on the team, then taught tennis. She became a tennis mom with my daughter. My daughter, who's now 17, was a top junior tennis player in Florida. Mm-hmm. We traveled all over the country, and she participated in junior tournaments. She did very well. We have trophy after trophy. But that sport is grueling. And one of the mistakes we made was making it seem like a job. She went to the Everett Tennis Academy with the best of the best. Great coaches. Chris Everett told me personally that, David, we wish we had more students like Alexa because she wants to do this.
Yeah.
But she might not have been the most gifted athlete, but she worked hard.
Right.
Always hurt. Back, wrists. So eventually when they said, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, it beats up your body.
It beat up her body.
Yeah.
And she quit the academy.
Wow.
Went to public high school in Palmetto. And she hadn't been in public high school or public school for years. She was doing online, playing tennis, traveling the country.
Way.
That's how the tennis players do it. So Natalia, also a tennis player, she's had ACLs repaired, hip and more. Natalia started playing pickleball for fun on this broken down court next to the firehouse in Coconut Grove. It's a converted cracked tennis court, and they made 4 pickleball courts out of it and a temporary nest.
Yeah.
She just started playing. Next thing you know, she loved it. Next thing you know, Alexa started going with her. My son started going. And I hit a few times.
Yeah.
Marie Fernandez, good friend of ours, she hit as well. And this was the beginning. This was only a year and a half ago. I'm telling you, 18 months ago. Natalia fell in love with it. She started playing in tournaments because she's a competitive athlete her whole life. She did well. Alexa fell in love with it. Started playing in competitive tournaments because you know why? You have the same mind as you are on the tennis court.
Sure.
So next thing I know, she's playing in what's called minor league pickleball, which is anybody can sign up and play, but she was doing well. One of her partners is a former ATP touring tennis pro, Wonka, we call him Saez, I believe. Great pickleball, great tennis player. And so they partnered, they won some tournaments. A brand called Goat Paddle, created by these 2 awesome guys out of Fort Myers, said, can we sign her as an athlete? We don't really have much money, but we think we can help her in her career. Zach and his partner, Ryan. And I said, sure, plus I'll help you. So she signed a contract with GOAT for 1 year, and they outfitted her. They gave her paddles. They did social media.
No way.
She coached. She made a little bit of money.
Yeah.
And she started to play a few pro tournaments. And while she was with GOAT, she played, there were 2 tours, PPA and APP. PPA, the players actually have contracts with the league, and they get paid no matter what. APP is more like the ATP
of
tour.
tennis.
Yeah, sorry, I lost my letters. It's more like that.
Yeah.
And you don't get a contract, but you have contract to play in a certain number of times, and you get money based on winnings and sponsorship. So she played a PPA tournament, Alexa did, after only playing pickleball for 7 months or maybe 6 months, representing GOAT in Punta Gorda or Port Charlotte, somewhere over there. She knocked off people who were top in singles where they were throwing their and she got written up in Forbes because she had to qualify. It's just like a pro.
Yeah.
She didn't qualify, but they have what's called a lucky loser. So the best qualifier can get in if somebody drops out. So she was the lucky loser, got in and knocked off and made it all the way through to, I think, the quarters.
Wow.
And when that happened and she got written up, everybody saw. And they're like, who is this kid?
Yeah.
And we thought it would be just a one tournament, one hit wonder. No, she fell in love with it. She started playing the tour, and now she is very committed to a great tour called the APP. It's run by Ken Herman. Ken is building this fabulous pickleball facility in Fort Lauderdale. Great guy, former tennis player. His son's on there. I love that tour, and I've helped to support it by just bringing athletes out there. We had Solomon out there. We've had I had Lee Steinberg with me in Newport Beach. Great. Alexa's part of the Next Gen program, which means that I think it's from 13 or 14, maybe 16 to 23. They have a tournament for themselves, but they also travel together. She's on the Next Gen part, so they have a tournament coming up in Dallas next week, and she'll play with Next Gen, just the younger kids. And then she actually traveled to the United Kingdom with the Next Gen and the U.S. national team. She's not technically on the U.S. national team. She's the first alternate, but she'll likely be on that next year. And so the U.S. national team for APP travels internationally and plays. At the British Open or the English Open, she made it to the women's finals.
And she's only been playing a year and a half.
Women's finals. And she beat her top teammates along the way. She made it all the way to the finals. It was on YouTube Live with a big audience. And there I am watching my daughter play with a big crowd.
You're freaking
I have
out.
photos, and she's doing great.
Awesome.
And then since then, she's played and she's done well with a partner. So she's hooked.
And her body's not beat up, man.
She signed with Franklin Sporting Goods.
Good
she
for
has
her.
a contract with Franklin. She just did a photo shoot. She's doing well. I mean, this is a 17-year-old girl who's making a small income.
Yeah.
She's doing her school online. She'll go to college, maybe stay in Florida to train FAU or something. But she loves it. So pickleball is my household. My wife is a director of pickleball at Lifetime Fitness at the Falls. So it's all pickleball in my
pickleball
family.
all the time.
And my two sons play. Nico, who's a junior at University of Florida, Nicholas, he's on the pickleball club team while he's studying finance. He'll go work in M&A as an intern for Evercore next summer.
Yeah.
And Matthew works for Google in New York, my son who graduated.
That's awesome.
Guess what he does? Plays pickleball on the weekends.
Amazing.
And I don't play at all.
How big of sport do you think it gets?
Oh, I think it's going to be bigger than we know because tennis is very popular.
But it beats you up.
The problem is that it does. There's a limitation on it. And pickleball is great for the older crowd. If you look at the sponsors of the tour, Zimmer Biomet, the orthopedics, they got it right. These are people who know that it's an easier movement game. It's a smaller court. But yet it's
and you
still
can pick it up quick. Like you and I can just go start. Like I can't just start playing tennis if I've never played. It's
we can pick up pickleball quick, but
no, they get good at it like anything. But
I'm telling you, I'm impressed by the level of play.
Oh, I'm sure it's great.
So I travel. We alternate. Either Natalia travels or so I've been with her to multiple tournaments: Cincinnati, Newport Beach. I was in St. Louis, Chicago.
Oh, so she's traveling a lot.
Yeah, I'll be in Dallas next. I just work from the hotel.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what, the other thing I've done is I've taken in some of the other junior players. It just goes back to my, because they have to pay their own way. So I'll get a bigger room or Newport Beach. I rented a house on Balboa Island.
That's awesome.
And I took in two of the top juniors. We had fun. And every night we went out to dinner and I thought, these could be my kids. Pay it forward, right?
Yeah.
So
you're getting back into your old sports thing. You're gonna start putting together marketing deals.
Well, I don't know if I'll put marketing deals together, but I can sure do sports health PR, which we do a lot of at Riso Partners.
Very good. All right. Couple rapid fire questions. You ready? A lot of people don't know this, but you're a pretty good guitar player.
I'm a pretty good guitar player. That's correct. And you could see it on my social media. I started playing guitar as a freshman in high school. I never played in a band that played out, but I played in a band that played in the basement or in a shed.
Yeah, you jam out.
In my basement in Brockton, where remember we have basements there.
Yes.
It's all cement. I had a Marshall half-stack amp that if you turned it up, you could hear it down the block. And we had posters of all the guitarists. A drummer who played with me, Rick, is tremendous. He's actually today plays in the Led Zeppelin. Somebody from around the block, Rich Dooley, phenomenal guitar player. He is in a cover band that plays the Allman Brothers at these big, incredible. So I grew up a child of rock and roll.
Yeah.
I'm a 70s and 80s rocker at heart. I don't care for today's music. I would rather listen to that. If you drive home with me, you'll hear it playing the same song list over and over again.
It's the best.
So I
such a
love
great
it.
era.
And you know why I do it? I stopped doing it because of time, and then I started doing it again because we can't just do our work. We can't just do physical workouts. We need something else to focus on.
Absolutely.
My daughter does painting.
Yeah.
My wife does art. I do the music. And I bought an amplifier that it sounds like anything. And at my party, when I have cover bands in between the sets, I'm playing on stage.
There you go.
And I'm going to have
You're living your best life.
I'm going to have my wife's cousin sing with me. I mean, have fun with it. I love playing guitar.
Yeah. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Mount Rushmore of guitar players.
One of my favorite guitar players, Neil Schon of Journey, is one of my favorites.
Neil Schon. Yeah.
Alex Lifeson of Rush. By the way, I know the Rush lighting guy. He's connected me. Connect with him. Howard Ungerleider. He's on Facebook. I went to a Rush show about
There's
10
no
years
women
ago.
at Rush shows.
Well,
it's
no,
all
actually,
dudes.
my wife was there.
Okay, well.
We sat on the lighting board. Howard's been with the band since the beginning. Aaron Hasnain, who I mentioned, he's part of their family. So I went to Rush, and Howard and I connect all the time. So, I mean, I love Neil Schon's style of playing.
Yeah.
I watch his videos, and he's today sitting in his home studio playing with.
It's like magic.
But he's just such a great tone. He played with Carlos Santana originally. I love Rush, but for my playing, I like hard driving rock and roll. Van Halen, of course. I love Van Halen. Eddie Van Halen was a master of it.
His brother comes out with a book today. His brother Alex. Yeah, I literally just bought it. It's called Brothers.
I love it. I can play, some of my videos are me playing Van Halen. I mean, I can learn it by watching, not a video. I know how to read music, but I look at the tabs.
Yeah.
So I'll play Best of Both Worlds. I'll play Standing on the Top of the World. I can play all that stuff.
Okay, Van Halen. Sammy Hagar or David Lee Roth?
I like them both, but I like them both. But I love Sammy Hagar.
Wow.
I love Sammy Hagar. Let me tell you what. I saw Sammy Hagar in the Circle this past year at Hard Rock in Hollywood.
I think my brother was there.
It was a great show. And Sammy Hagar.
I love the way he lives his life.
Jason Bonham on drums.
Yeah.
His guitarist was Vic.
Mark Anthony's in that band. Yeah.
Michael Anthony.
Michael Anthony.
And then they changed to Steve. I think it's either Steve Vai is now on guitar, but they played all the Van Halen songs. And you know most.
Yeah,
of them.
you know me.
But I tell you what,
we grew up with that.
On my playlist that I'll listen to on my way home on my iPhone will be some of the old Van Halen, but a lot of the Sammy Hagar stuff. It just the energy it brings.
It's the best, man.
I mean, I love Sammy's voice. All of it.
He's so cool.
Do you know that one of my very first concerts back in 1980? I'm dating myself. My first concert ever was Rush. May 16th, 1980.
You didn't have a date that night.
Providence Civic Center.
Yeah.
They came out with long hair and double neck guitars, and they opened up with 2112 Anthem. And guess what? We had to be dropped off in a station wagon by our parents.
You weren't cool.
Because we weren't old enough. It was sort of like that movie Detroit Rock City. You know, the kids.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Those
but one of my first concerts that summer. Well, I saw Van Halen with David Lee Roth swinging from a. But in Boston Garden. But I also saw in Boston Garden. Well, it was in Boston and Providence Civic Center was Black Sabbath. But opening for Black Sabbath and Dio was Sammy Hagar's own band.
Really?
Before he was big. So I saw Sammy played in our football stadium in Boulder, Colorado in 1986. They did the summer tour. That was for the big tour 5150, one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's my music stuff. I love that music.
All right. Very controversial. Did Marvelous Hagler
Did Marvelous beat Sugar Ray?
Yes. Did he beat Sugar Ray?
He didn't beat Sugar Ray. And
do you think the fix was in?
I don't think there was any
Was the Italian mob involved?
No, I don't think the mob was involved. It might have been the Greek mob, but the true story is when I was growing up, I worked at night cleaning office buildings, like your office building was back in, and I pushed a broom and I swept. I worked for a retired boxer, Juan the Butcher Boy Bata. Look him up.
All right.
He was Marvin's sparring partner when Marvin was a kid. Juan moved to Brockton from Argentina, was a professional fighter, and he was trained by Goody and Pat Petronelli, who trained Rocky Marciano. Juan would clean homes and he used to clean our house. The nicest guy. And we would talk all the time. So I worked with him. I used to shampoo rugs with him. This was manual labor.
Yeah.
But in his basement was a trophy room like no other with photos and all. So we used to go downtown and watch Marvin train.
Wow.
And then there was a little bar, Armenian place called The Pub right next to the gym.
Yeah.
And downstairs was a legitimate restaurant. Upstairs was the card game like in The Sopranos. True story. True story.
Yeah.
True story. Downstairs, Marvin would be there drinking a beer. And there I was, probably 15 or 16, hanging out with Marvin. And Marvin was the gentlest, nicest person you would ever meet. He was humble, just as you saw him after he fought.
And totally
he told
jacked.
Sugar Ray, right? I don't need no rematch, Sugar Ray. I don't need him. I'm done.
Yeah.
You know what? That's who he was. He was a down-to-earth guy. he got robbed earlier on, but I honestly, when you watch,
they always screwed with him early in his career, and they made him fight in Europe and all this kind of crap.
And you remember when he won the title? I think it was one of the fights against Alan Minter. They were throwing stuff in the ring.
Yeah, they didn't treat him right. I think he always had a chip on his shoulder about that.
But Marvin was a genuine. Brockton, Mass, the city of champions, that he represented us, Marcianos. I went to school with all the Marciano kids. Peter Marciano, rest in peace, was a great football player, great. He unfortunately had issue with pain pills.
Yeah.
He was a kick return. All the families were intertwined. That was the fabric of Brockton. And
that's why people loved him.
And people loved Marvin because he was just a hardworking guy.
Yeah.
And his brother Robbie Sims was also a middleweight fighter. And they fought out of Petronelli's gym. Pat and Goody Petronelli were incredible trainers of Rocky Marciano. They trained my good friend Juan Bada, who passed away. Every time the anniversary of John's death comes up, his wife Donna was a nurse at the hospital my dad worked. I always praise them. There's an article in the New York Times that you can barely read, but it's a photo. The only one tough enough to get into the ring with Marvin to spar was John Bada.
Wow.
And Juan was tough.
He took his beatings.
He beat him too. I mean, he could have knocked him out. Juan was a tough middleweight. And one of the nicest people. So again, notice my upbringing. I was surrounded by the blue collar, but I didn't come from a blue collar background. My dad was an orthopedic surgeon.
Right.
But we went to school with that. We did the work.
Everybody was integrated.
Everybody.
You broke bread with them. Everything.
Everybody was. And you know what? To this day, that's what I value.
That's what makes you.
And that's why I can relate to the people.
All right. Most people know that you're a huge Hurricane fan. What is the greatest Hurricane team ever? So all those great teams, you got 86, 87, 91, 2001.
I actually think it was the 2001 team.
Yeah, it was pretty
loaded. If you look at the 2001 team, look at the depth. Look at the talent that came out of that. I mean, that's unheard of.
It's unheard of.
When you think of the previous teams, especially go all the way back to what Schnellenberger did.
Right.
I mean, that was transformational for the program.
Correct.
This program is going through a transformation now, as you can see.
Yes.
Think about it. This is Mario's third year. Now, Mario Cristobal and Lou are like brothers to me.
I know this.
The true story is that we were roommates, not at Miami, but in Clara Cristobal's small house with bars on the windows. Listen to this story. So after I met Mario and Carlos Huerta, and we would work out together and more, and I met him through Sports One, I helped Mario to get to the World League.
Yeah.
And he played in Amsterdam with John Bach, who's one of my good friends now.
They played for the Dolphins, right?
Yeah, John played for, he was number 60, and the Jets. Great friend of mine.
Yeah.
I go speak with him all the time. I went to a Def Leppard concert with him recently. We all became friends, and it wasn't work; it was just friendship. I was living in a studio apartment that Huerta had, and he went to play football, I think, in the Canadian League, and he said, "Just stay there for me, keep it. I want it."
Yeah.
It was so hot, the air conditioning didn't work, and Mario came to me like a brother. He's young, 5 years younger. And he said, "Hey, David, I have a proposition. My mother and father are getting on with age, and I'm going to go play again in Amsterdam. Lou's married. He works for the police force. I really need somebody to look after them. And we have an in-laws quarters that's on the side of the kitchen. And it's locked off. Come check it out." And I checked it out. It was a 2-little-room place with a bathroom and its own side entrance. Just south of Coral Way, a blue-collar Cuban neighborhood. And I walked in there. I met the mother and father, Louis and Claire, and they were so sweet. And they said, "Look, you can. Plus, we need the money, Claire."
Sure.
So I think I paid $350 a month, and I moved in. There was a lock-off door between the kitchen. That door was never locked from day one.
Wow!
I was treated like the third son of the Cristobals, and we did everything together. We'd go out to eat. Mario, when he was home, we'd work out together. We'd go out to eat. We'd go mentor the younger crowd. That was back in the mid-'90s. So Casey Jones, Kevin Brinkworth.
Yeah.
We helped them with their direction. We would go to their house. And so that's how we all became friends. But Mario was the more senior of them. I was more senior than them. And we worked out together. We used to go to the U facility back then and work out. And the coach would be like, "Come on and do whatever you want." And so that's how I got to know Mario and Lou. I saw them through their changes in life.
Yeah.
I saw when Mario needed an internship because he had no money. I said, "Just come to my PR firm." And that's when I was with Patricia Thorpe.
Yeah.
He was my intern.
Was
I had
he
Mario
really?
Cristobal cutting articles with the scissors. The best story of Mario Cristobal that you should publish, and Mario mentioned this before in one of his podcast interviews. I hired him one time to be the bodyguard for Garfield the cat.
Wow, wait, what?
Tenet South Florida Health System.
Yeah.
So we represented Tenet Health System in my healthcare work here in South Florida. Tenet had signed a deal with Jim, whatever the last name is, from Garfield.
Right.
I think he's in Indiana. They had the rights to use Garfield in a pediatric marketing program. So one of the assignments was to have Garfield show up, like a mascot, at pediatric and NICU events at hospitals throughout South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We had to find somebody to wear the costume. Now, it wasn't Mario.
It wouldn't fit him.
It was a big head, like a ping pong ball in a suit. It must have been 105 degrees. I found a small guy at the gym who was an MMA fighter, and I know he needed the money. So I offered him money that came through the client. He said, I'll do it any day.
Yeah.
And then they advised us to have somebody as his helper because people bang on his head.
Yeah.
So I got Mario. So Mario and I forget his name, but the Garfield guy was in the suit with the head off. We had a stretch limousine. Mario was in a suit, looked like a Secret Service man. He did interview. And it was me with a notebook. And we went to hospitals. And as we pulled up for the fair, Garfield was abused. And so Mario...
We'd have to push people off.
When we returned the Garfield costume, there were cigarette burns in the head. One of the eyes was hanging out. And we said, this is life in South Florida.
Yeah.
So Mario will tell you, we had fun. But what Mario always had was discipline.
Yeah.
He would come in like I did early. I never left before 7 o'clock. And to this day, Mario and we have the same work ethic. His mom used to say, oh, David, you and Mario, all you do is work. I said, no, Clara, this is our passion.
Yeah.
Your son does this not because he has to, because he wants to. He interviewed with the U.S. Secret Service. I was one of his references. He got the offer to join the Secret Service. So now he had the choice. Do I go that way? Came from a law enforcement family. His dad worked for General Batista in Cuba, worked in the White House.
Wow.
His grandfather worked for Batista. His brother's now with Miami-Dade. Does he go to Secret Service or does he go football? If he goes football, he's going to make little money and he's going to be a GA.
Yeah.
He went that route because that was his heart and we supported it.
Yeah.
He played again in the World League. Then he got a GA spot at Miami. And his very first coaching job, if you remember, was with Greg Schiano
at Rutgers. Yeah.
When he left to go to Rutgers, just as we all do in a good Cuban family, because I was part of it now, we all went to the house to see him there. He literally got home, threw on his clothes, had to go catch a flight. Mario, do you have any money? Nope. I think Lou and I gave him $20 bills and said, don't worry about it, just go. And Claire's like, oh, Porosito, my son's leaving, right? Oh, Dave. I said, Claire, don't worry. Now, by that time I was married, but I lived in the Cristobal household for, I think, 4 years.
You lived there for 4 years?
4 years. And we took care of each other.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what. Mario helped me. I helped Mario. We helped Clara.
Yeah.
Clara and Louis. Louis had passed away. I've never met anybody as generous and open as Clara Cristobal. She worked at a car dealership for 33 years.
Wow.
In a title office. If Clara had $10 and you needed something, she would give it to you and she wouldn't eat.
Yeah.
This was her upbringing. When I saw that, I thought, this is crazy. So let me tell you that I was there till I got married because that was a family. I come from a nice family, but we were cold. My dad always worked. My mother wasn't around. My mother wasn't taught. This was a warm Cuban American family, and I was part of it. That's why, and Lou will tell you this to this day, we became part of the family. So when I got married, Clara was there. She saw I proposed to my wife. She was the one I went to. I called my mom, who I loved to death, and my dad, but Clara was there for me.
Wow.
There for me. And I moved out when I got married. So imagine that. I could have had a door locked, but never. Clara cooked for us. Mario would cook chicken for me and him. We'd make protein shakes.
Yeah.
And we took care of each other. And you know what? When I look at success that he has, what I have, what Lou has now, I attribute it not just to my upbringing in Brockton, but I attribute it to the lessons learned through Clara Cristobal. Because what Clara taught us was just be good to people.
Yeah.
Open your heart. And she always did that. When she passed away, I was at the funeral. That place was mobbed. And Mario mentioned the people she loved. And I said, I learned a lot from Clara. And I'll never forget that. So to this day, I'll always say, you know what, Mario, you won. I'm on a text with him, his wife, with Lou and Elizabeth Cristobal. Clara's looking down. Lou's looking down. Because he's doing what he wants.
Yeah,
Mario Cristobal does this work because he enjoys it. Because he wants to. I can tell you what, Mario might get paid well. And that's for his family. He just wants to win.
Yeah, you can tell that guy puts in the hours. Yeah, he cares.
Mario will look you in the eye and say, I just want to win.
Absolutely.
I want to win a chance. To him, that's worth more than money.
100%. You get that in the language he uses. Even some on the radio is like, this guy.
Look, you know it too.
Yeah.
Cuban American. When I look at your dad and your family, mean, they didn't have a lot when they came
No.
here, but they all did well. Carlos Saladrigas,
Yeah.
that's valuable.
Absolutely.
I mean, Aldo Sal, who I love to death. When I see what these families went through, it's no different than the kids in Liberty City.
No,
I didn't
not
go
at
through
all.
that growing up.
No.
My dad did,
Yeah.
but I didn't.
Yeah.
So, but you just have to respect them for what they've been through.
Yeah, anytime I have a hard day, I'm like, this is not a hard day. A hard day is coming over here penniless, not knowing the language, not knowing when you're going to go home,
but the
or if you're going to go
doing
home.
great, 7-0.
All right, so is this? We'll wrap it up with this question: is this the year the Canes win the national championship?
I think the Canes will make a great run for the national
I do too.
championship. I don't know if the Canes will win the championship, but success should be based on the progress that this team has made.
Yeah.
When Mario, Alex Mirabal, who I
Great
love
guy.
to death, like a brother to me too, Mike Rumpf, I know all the whole staff. I mean, I know. Let me tell you, a lot of these guys have been with him for years. I think of Salavea, who's there, right, too, and these guys.
Jason Taylor.
Yeah, Jason Taylor. These are good people.
Yeah.
And when they got there, the program was broken.
Yeah, 100%.
The discipline was gone. There was no respect. Manny Diaz, nice guy, and he's doing well at Duke, but there was no discipline. I heard these kids were up playing video games at night. They would show up late for a meeting. They had to change the culture back to what it was to build a championship team, and then they had to get talent to do it. So he is a master recruiter.
Yeah, he is.
Alex is a master recruiter, and they're getting good players.
They might have the Heisman Trophy winner.
Cam Ward is awesome. The tough thing about the portal is it could be one and done, and you have to replace that quarterback. But if you notice, Oregon, what is Oregon's ranking on? Number one?
They're number one.
That team was built by Mario.
Yeah.
That's Mario's team and Alex's team, Joe Salavea's team. They built that team. I was with Mario when he coached at Rutgers, went to a game there. When Mario was at FIU,
you were
on
there.
the sidelines for games. When they turned it around and filled the stands and T.Y. Hilton was playing.
Biggest mistake FIU ever made was moving on.
Well,
Silly.
They did make a mistake, but we all know that story. I won't go into it. Then when he went to Alabama, he actually called me. He called Lou and he called Puga. He had accepted the job at Miami.
That's right.
With Al Golden.
I forgot about that.
Jesse, the AD, who I know well, he's now at Northwestern. He was one of the assistants, said, hey, we're going to do a press conference for Coach. I said, a press conference? Guess who we have here in the office? We signed him. Like, who is it, Jesse? Because Jesse had been with FAU. This Coach Cristobal. I'm like, what? He said, yeah, Mario, after FIU, he was hired at Miami, and he was going to be under Al Golden at Miami.
Right.
Within weeks of that, he got calls. I think Chud wanted him in Cleveland. And he called me and it's like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't. He goes, I can't see myself going to Cleveland. I said, Mario Lindon. And then Nick Saban called him. And he called me up, and I think he called Lou, Roll Puga, and me, people who are trusted in the inner circle. And we all had the same thing. Mario, you got to go. You know why? You've done what you can here in South Florida.
Right.
It's not your time at the U.
Right.
Go show you can do this elsewhere and prove it. And he did. And not only that, he learned from some very, very strict coaches. He put in his time under Saban. He was a master recruiter. And he won national championships. And he took that with Willie Taggart, as you remember, to Oregon.
To Oregon, you're right.
So I went to great Alabama games there. I worked out in the Alabama weight room on Saturday morning before an afternoon game with Dak Prescott, Mississippi State. Mario was with us.
That's cool.
Lou Cristobal, Lewis Jr., who's now on the Miami Hurricanes offense line, and my son Matthew. Mario, we're in the weight room. It's a two-story, three-story building in Tuscaloosa. Mario was doing workout with me and Lou and Lewis and Matthew, and he comes over to me and goes, can you effing believe it? I'm like, what? We're just a bunch of Miami guys working out here in the Alabama weight room. I go, it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
You want a smoothie, David? They had everything there. I mean, it was first class. Now, FIU, they had nothing.
Different program, right.
They had nothing. Here, they had everything. And then when he got to Oregon, he was an assistant. Remember? Under Willie Taggart.
Yeah.
I went to an Oregon game against Nebraska, and I sat in the stands, got baked by the Oregon sun. I was there with Matt Britton.
Yeah, you played at Columbus.
Columbus and Miami, great linebacker. And I was there with Carlos Huerta. And then Jessica and the kids. At the end of the game, after they won, we went to Mario's tiny little office, and Taggart came in with his family, and they literally walked right by us, didn't even acknowledge us. And I asked somebody, and I don't remember who said, but that's how they are. They have their own crew.
Yeah.
And I found that to be odd, because if that were Mario, he welcomes everybody.
Yeah.
And he was trained by Saban too. He knows how to schmooze. So I said, this is odd. Now, at the end of that season, remember what happened? Taggart went to FSU.
Right.
So the players lobbied for Coach Cristobal, and he was awarded the job as head coach before the bowl game in Vegas. I flew to Vegas. I went to the bowl game with Lou and the family, and we were there in the stands because I said, this is my brother. He was with me, helping me to get my footing in PR.
Yeah.
He's now the head coach. I owe this to him and always will. So I went, and we had a great time, and we celebrated. They lost the game to Boise State, but we didn't care. He was now the head coach. Now in the regular season, I went out to a game, and I sat in the family suite, not the bleachers.
Yeah.
And Jessica Cristobal is the most fabulous host and caring. I was there with the mom, the aunt. I was there with my son, with Carlos Huerta. And we were given the treatment the way that the Cuban families do.
Yeah.
The love was there. And you just sensed something different. So they did what they had to. He built it, but eventually he knew it was time to move on. And he came to where he belongs. I mean, he should have had the job years ago when they hired Mark Richt.
Yeah, 100%.
Should have had it, but they didn't give it to him. And you know why? Because at the time, the story was they said, oh, well, he was with us and he quit. Well, he quit because he was better than your head coach. Al Golden was a failure.
100. Well, but I got to tell you, in the end, it worked out for the best because I think him going to those other programs for a couple of years
it absolutely
helped him.
Worked out
And this and we didn't have the money. They weren't putting the money in the program. It would have been tough on him.
And they had a different mindset. But I think that for the University of Miami, with the glory that you've seen as a child, what we remember is it's back. I mean, the energy is there. He's getting bodies into the seats in a very challenging stadium to play. I mean, obviously that's a tough
thing.
That's a tough place to fill the stadium. But they're going to do it. Now they have FSU this week. And Mario, I actually listened to his press conference on Monday. I listened to it on my iPad. You just said it's a talented team. You can't overlook it.
And they're going to come ready.
This is 1-0 every week. 1-0. They focus on one game. You can't look beyond Florida State. Florida State will come ready. And these are the same kids from down here and in the state. So they're all going to play. But does Mario have a better team? It does. Does Mario have a better staff and know how to get the most from these kids? Yes. Yeah. Mario's team it's just like Survivor, outwit, outwork.
Yeah.
They're going to beat you to it. But at the end of the day, Mario Cristobal would sit here with me and say, you know, Dave, you know what? You know what, Dan? I don't care about any of this stuff. I just want to win a championship. That's what I care about. That's my pride. Yeah. I want these kids to have it. I want the school to have it. That's the type of coach I want to play for.
100%.
I want to play for that coach because today it's become such a business with the NIL and with the portal. Mario is going to help those players to develop as good human beings. When I look at what he does and what Alex does, I tell Alex's wife all the time, look at what Al's done. He was a coach at Columbus. Yeah. He got his break in college because Mario went to FIU.
Right.
Those players love. Alex Mirabal, who is probably, how tall is he?
He's a little guy, but he's
Cuban American.
But these giants love him.
He is a giant in coaching the offensive line and recruiting.
100%.
And if I were a player, I've walked through the facility when he's teaching.
Yeah.
And he had top offensive linemen, and he'll come out of the room, Dave, how are you? How's Natalia? This is how they are.
Yeah, this is the kind of people they are.
If anybody deserves to win, they do.
Yeah.
For the hell they've been put through going back to FIU days and doing it with no support.
Yeah.
They're now on a bigger stage, and they're going to bring a championship. Will they win it this year? I don't know, but they're going to certainly give it a great run, and that's all that matters to me.
100%.
Mario's done it well.
He's done it the right way. He's done it right. All right, amigo, where can people find out about you?
Okay, so Russo Partners, my public relations firm. If you go to look me up on LinkedIn, you can look me up on X, but my firm is russopartnersllc.com. We've been working with companies, mostly emerging healthcare companies, since 1988. I've been with the firm going on 20 years.
Wow.
We are known in emerging healthcare circles, biotech, biopharma, and more. My partner is the builder of this type of communications, and we love it. So they can find me there. But I also think that I give a lot of credit to you and your family because I go back to the Avante Case Hoyt days.
Yeah.
And your dad was a genius in building a family business. And I remember that he spun out the fulfillment to form Inktel.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you, and we actually did work together.
We did.
And I was impressed.
You gave me my media training. I wouldn't be here on a podcast
But what I remember is that what the Areola brothers represented to me was work ethic. That every one of your family members, no matter what your dad had done with success, had the drive to go to school, get a good education, get a master's degree, to do something bigger and better and help people. I've never met a family of brothers like yours that has great success. And Ricky, tremendous success. love him to death. Eddie, I mean, love him to death. I've seen him on flights. I saw him and look at what he's done with the bank. And you've taken this business and it's skyrocketed. You deserve a lot of credit for what you've done. And you've done it the same way, the same recipe. Great work plus great relationships. And you've done it here, Chicago, and elsewhere.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks, man.
I'm proud of what
I'm proud
you
of
guys
you.
do.
Look at you.
Look, I'm happy with what you do. You know what makes me happy?
Yeah.
My children are doing well.
Yeah, they're doing great.
My son works for Google. My other son's going to be in investment banking. My daughter is following her passion. If everybody else is fine and taken care of, and I can get up and do my workout in the morning, and I can do my work and talk to people, then I'm satisfied. I don't care about anything else. That's success to me. If I know that tomorrow somebody, we took, final story, Darrell Eskridge, great story. This kid grew up sleeping in a car. This is Aunt Dela's ex-brother-in-law. He got his degree at the Q's many years later because he was lured out by an agent to go play in NFL. He didn't make it. He played on practice squad. Right. He went and did it, and he was posting. I said, Rel, we have to celebrate. What you did as a life accomplishment. He goes, I don't really have my girlfriend. My family can't. So we all went to the fancy steakhouse. We ate, we drank, we laughed. That's great. I said, let me tell you something, Darrell. What you did is a life-changing accomplishment. And others are going to follow behind you. If you set that path the way that Dela did and you walk it, Dela, his son Semino, his son Tony, who played for A&M, they all got degrees. Darrell got his degree. And I said, Darrell, pay it forward, man. Someday in life when I'm old and I can't do things, help my kids and I'll be happy.
There you go.
Dan, good work. Great to be here at Intel. And I'm proud of you. You've done a hell of a job. Any way I can help this team, I will.
Thank you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Happy to do it.
Go Canes.
Go Canes.